Doesn't really work without people. I think quite often you can look at artworks of mine and they look quite quiet or calm or minimalist, and it was only really when you add the people to it that it kind of has a second life, like something that you would sit on or climb on or lean on. I kind of like that participation element, but I quite like to be in control of that. So I suppose in that respect I'm a bit like a director. One of the things that I think is quite important to my practice is to have some kind of engagement with public space. I'm quite fascinated by public space and by how it's used and by how it's managed and also by how it's designed and how people choose to use it, which isn't necessarily what the designers and the town planners wanted to be done with it. Melbourne Slowdown is essentially a cycling project that produced an enormous chalk drawing throughout the streets of Melbourne. 5 groups of cyclists from different suburbs of the city cycled their way into the gallery, and on their bikes we had made an attachment that produced a chalk line as they cycled. A really cool device that involves a plastic water bottle with the bottom cut off, little hole drilled in the bottom of the bottle, and drilled into the bottle there's a lip that drags along the ground that is what gives the vibration that makes the chalk spill out as you cycle. I have made this work once before in a really small town in the north of Scotland. The town is called Huntly. It was about allowing the community an opportunity to look at where they might put bike lanes in their town, because there was no bike lanes. The thing with Huntly that I really wanted to do was to allow people to get that feeling of just how good it is to go down a hill fast on your bike without any fear of cars, without any fear of car doors opening on you. So in that instance, the relationship between fast and slow was to do with this opportunity to go fast with a big group of people. So in Melbourne it was quite a different thing. Clearly it's a much, much bigger city. A lot of the cycling I was looking at or getting in the way of was commuters going really fast through the bike lanes to get from A to B in a very big city. It was really important that they went slowly, and the fact that they went very slowly through a city that they know very well, what you got was this kind of meandering through a city, a kind of different view on something that you think you know already, and that different view came a lot from the speeds that people cycled at. Lifting your head up and having a look around you at things that have been there all the time but you hadn't quite noticed. Things like the fact that at certain points the bike lanes don't join up. You know, on your route from one part of the city to another, you maybe go over a beautiful flyover that gives you this incredible view of the railway, or you go through a park that you just whiz through and don't really take in. It works very well with this idea of desire lines. We had 100 cyclists making lines throughout the city, and those lines all came to one central point outside ACCA. So what you have is like a giant drawing, over 20 miles of chalk drawing through the streets. It worked on many levels, to make a drawing, to navigate the streets of the city, and to look at use of the roads and pathways around the city, and to involve a lot of people. I came for a site visit just almost a year before the actual event. What we initially looked at was routes. I just spent 5 days cycling around Melbourne. Had some ideas of what I was thinking of, had some ideas of distance. After I went back to Scotland, I had some maps on the wall of my studio and had some books to read and had some photographs. And then, of course, you just got all the usual things you get when you're working across continents. So really simple things like you do not get the same size of plastic bottles in Australia as you get in the UK. We didn't really agree the final routes until I arrived 2 weeks before the event. There was a really good sense of ownership that people took of the project, which I was really delighted with. There was so many tourists just photographing them. So, you know, there's this little bit of chalk that's traced all around the city of Melbourne, but also is going back to China or London or Glasgow or wherever in people's memories of the trip that they made to Melbourne. I just love that engagement of people with a space and how that then disperses afterwards. You can't control a city, you just can't control people's participation in a city, even if they don't take part in making the artwork. In the instance of something like Melbourne Slowdown, where there was such a large community of people that were taking part in it, all that social media afterwards that it's just out there and it's been distributed around the city by people that don't even know that I'm the artist in this instance. I have no problems with that, because that's what you take on when you work in the public realm, and eventually it might filter back that you know, why it happened. You know, I really love the idea that someone in Port Melbourne sees the lines and just thinks, where do these lines go, and just follows it and ends up here.